With the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's resignation yesterday, I've been asking myself, what makes a good leader? What qualities does a person need to work towards and achieve a vision, not only for themselves, but for a community, for their country, for a diverse population with many different needs and aspirations? It is certainly a relevant question in the context of this week's parasha, Va'era. It is here that the Torah portion sets the stage for the confrontation between Moses and Pharaoh. Go and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites depart from his land, says God. But Moses, a reluctant principal and dismayed by his first encounter with the Israelites, argues against his commission. The Israelites wouldn't listen to me, he says. How then should Pharaoh heed me? And he appeals to God, telling him, I am aral sefatayim. I am literally of uncircumcised lips. It is not the first time he has declared this impediment to speaking. Already 2 chapters earlier at the burning bush, he tells God that he has never been a man of words, but is slow of speech. Actually, the Hebrew is kaved, heavy of speech and heavy of tongue. Some of the commentators understand this to mean that Moses had a stammer, a kind of King George VI figure with all the awkwardness that went with this speech impediment. I was interested, however, in Abraham ibn Ezra's commentary to this phrase, where he goes into quite considerable technical detail, explaining that Moses couldn't pronounce certain letters, the labials, where you smack your lips together, and the linguals, sounds made with the tongue, which I think would have made him pretty incomprehensible, actually, poor fellow. Or was it simply that he was shy, unable to speak spontaneously without a script in front of him, something with which I, and no doubt many others, would certainly identify? Moses is a man without an ego. He never feels the compulsion to push himself forward for the sake of attaining power for himself. God's commission does not appeal to his own sense of vanity or self-aggrandizement. He is fearful, full of trepidation, uncertainty, and self-doubt. And remember, too, that he is not a young man. He's 80 years old, and his brother, Aaron, is 83 when they make their demand on Pharaoh. This weekend, in fact on Sunday to be precise, marks the 60th anniversary of the death of another religious leader, one of the founding members of the Jewish Religious Union, which was the first incarnation of liberal Judaism, and one of the religious and intellectual architects of this synagogue, Lily Montague, who died on January the 22nd, 1963, a month after her 89th birthday. Unlike Moses, she was young when she began her path towards becoming a religious leader. As a teenager, the minister, Reverend Simeon Singer, of Singer's prayer book fame, the Orthodox prayer book, entrusted to her the role of establishing and leading special children's services at the New West End Synagogue in Bayswater. Ellen Umansky, whose 2-volume study and collection of writings by Lily Montague, discovered that, and I quote, although as minister of the congregation, he could have supervised the services closely, he gave her complete freedom. In so doing, as Lily Montague later observed, he provided her with the opportunity to explore ways of awakening a spirit of worship in others, while at the same time helping her to recognize her own leadership potential. Lily Montague found these services well attended, not only by children, but also by women, including her own mother, and as a result began to envision ways of instituting similar services specifically for adults. By the age of 17, she began to devote an increasing amount of time to social service, together with her sister Marion, to whom she was very close, tutoring working class girls living in the East End of London, and later on founding the West Central Jewish Girls Club, sharing education, faith, and friendship with those who attended. In 1899, bolstered by the friendships and respect she had gained within the club, which had been established in 1893, Lily Montague began to envision the creation of a movement aimed at the revitalization of Anglo-Jewish life. Her essay, Spiritual Possibilities of Judaism Today, was published in the Jewish Quarterly in 1899. She was just 26 years old. It's quite a difficult essay to read today. It's a little bit patronizing because it was a stinging rebuke against what she termed West End Jews and East End Jews, whose form of Judaism she criticized as lacking integrity and vitality. Observances, she said, had become rigid and meaningless, superficial, or at worst neglected. Prayer no longer had meaning, and Judaism no longer had real influence in their lives. It was with encouragement from friends and family, and don't forget that she was part of a very wealthy family, part of what was called the cousinhood in Anglo-Jewry, very well connected. Her father was very wealthy, he was a very important public figure, as were various aunts and uncles. So with that kind of encouragement from her own family, not from her father, by the way, who wouldn't have anything to do with her involvement in the Jewish Religious Union, in the liberal movement, but also from friends that she made, quite close friends, within the West Central Club, she then embarked on a whole program to reformulate Judaism, which would attract those for whom the traditional forms of worship held little appeal. And she wanted to see whether there was any real interest among community leaders in such a reformulation. Her determination was not diminished by her father's lack of sympathy with his daughter's efforts. He was a strictly orthodox man. By the way, Lily Montague kept her own traditional observances right the way through her life, dietary observances, walking on Shabbat to synagogue. And on his legacy, it was sad, really. I think it must have caused her a lot of pain. On his death, he left her a legacy which came with the strict condition that none of it should be used for the advancement of liberal Judaism. And so she said to her brothers and sisters, well, then I don't want any of the money at all if it comes with that condition. But they persuaded her to take the money so that she could live reasonably comfortably, not that she was somebody who was at all indulgent. I think she lived quite a Spartan life together with her sister, neither of whom ever married. But beneath this determination, there was a shy woman, and certainly when she was young, lacking in self-confidence and totally uninterested in any of the social scene of young women of the period in which she lived. She rejected the dances. She rejected the idea of marriage as well. Although there are sort of myths that she looked up to Claude Montefiore, one of the three M's, one of the three founders of this synagogue, together with Rabbi Montague. And whether she had a little bit in love with him, who knows? We'll probably never know. But like Moses, Lily Montague found herself forced to overcome her own fears concerning her ability to assume a role of communal leadership. And she depended on the close relationship she had with her sister, with Marian, who encouraged and supported her, just as Moses, we see certainly in this week's Torah portion and in future parashiot, Moses depended on his older brother Aaron to be his spokesman, his voice, when he found himself lost for words. In both Moses and Lily, we see in the development of their vocational work, their achievements as leaders of their people, communicators in different ways, social workers, people who felt a deep empathy with their people. And in some ways, too, their intense spirituality made them intermediaries for what they felt was the voice of God, a voice that was critical and distinct in their own lives. Those who knew Lily in her mature years describe her as forceful, even charismatic, exerting strong influences over many, giving direction to their lives and helping to shape their ideas. She was a great organizer and succeeded in establishing and maintaining the Jewish Religious Union and the World Union for Progressive Judaism, as well as a handful of liberal synagogues in this country, including, of course, her own West Central Liberal Jewish congregation, where she preached, taught, ministered, officiated at marriages and baby blessings. Both Moses and Lily lived their lives deeply influenced by their relationship with God, and of them, people spoke of their spiritual aura. Some even maintain that, like Moses, Lily was a prophet, and that her spiritual power filled them with reverence and awe. I hope this year, as we mark the 60th anniversary of Lily Montague's death, and indeed the 150th anniversary of her birth in December, she was born in 1873, we can find a way to reevaluate liberal Judaism and revitalize its principles and practices so that future generations and new members will be inspired to join our synagogues and be part of the great legacy of Moshe Rabbeinu and Lily Montague.